All right, let's listen in now. Here's Dan May.
This is a bittersweet day for the prosecution and this community. It was a sweet day in the sense that justice was brought to Patrick Frazee for this brutal, gruesome, senseless murder. The judge sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. He then sentenced him consecutively for all other charges, 3 counts of solicitation, 1 count of tampering with the deceased body, and maximized those sentences to 156 years on top of the life without the possibility of parole. It's a sad day that all justice can do is hold Patrick Frazee accountable. We wish Kelsey were here today. That would be true justice if she could join us today. She did not deserve this. Today at sentencing, the family and her friends took the time not to attack Patrick Frazee, but to want the world to know who Kelsey was. Kelsey was a kind, wonderful person. Kelsey was a person of high integrity. Kelsey was one that mattered. They wanted people to know. She was one who was teaching our Air Force pilots, United States Air Force pilots, how to fly. And they went through the number of lives she's affected and changed in the time that she has done that job. She was a loving mother to Kaylee, a loving mother who the last day Kaylee will ever have a chance to see her mother was unfortunately November 22nd of last year. The last time she ever had a chance to touch her mother, the last chance she ever had a chance to hear from her mother. She was 13 months old and unfortunately will never have a memory of her mother. But everybody expressed that Kaylee was the center of her life and what a wonderful mother she was. She was a single mom trying to do it all. She had a full-time job that she had to travel an hour and a half to one way every day. And then she came home to take care of her daughter. You heard through this trial that many times she actually took her daughter to work when she wasn't flying, and everybody got to see how wonderful she was around her daughter. She was a devoted woman. On her desk at work was a calendar that had quotations from the Bible every single day. She did not deserve this. This was totally senseless and will haunt us on the prosecution team, and I think this community forever. I do want to thank people who were involved in this. You saw this case came very quickly to trial. It was an immense investigation crossing many state lines. Miles DeYoung, the chief of police with the Woodland Park Police Department, quickly recognized how huge a case this was and reached out for other agencies to help. Every agency in Teller County, that's what they do up here, was willing to jump forward to help on any case, much less one like this. It was wonderful to see the Colorado Bureau of Investigation step forward with all kinds of resources. This case could not have been solved without Greg Slater and Chris Adams. Step forward so they can see who you are. And they may or may not, answer questions for you. I don't know if they'll talk to you. This case could not have been solved except their dedicated work for the last year across multiple state lines. The Federal Bureau of Investigation stepped in and helped, and I know that they've taken some heat over the past year in some of their management, but I got to tell you, everybody we worked with here was wonderful. Special Agent DeFrance and his team, when they came out and did those crime scenes, brought something that nobody else could bring to this case. They were able to work across state lines in Idaho and Utah and aid us in every step of the way. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent DeFrance, they did a wonderful job that made a big difference in this case. My team was made up, as you can see over here. Stephanie Courtney was our investigator who's been on this case from the beginning. It has been an overwhelming task. Over 600 pieces of evidence, thousands of pieces of discovery. It's just been overwhelming. She hasn't complained at all. She's got a lot of comp time coming. I don't think I can afford the comp time in my budget. I may have to go back to the county commissioners for that because she has poured her life into this. Sarah Clements is our paralegal on this case, coordinated witnesses, helped with motions, prepared. Actually, if you saw all the notebooks we had in there, Sarah got to develop all of those notebooks. And again, in an incredibly quick time with thousands and thousands and thousands of pages.
Mr. May, I saw you get real emotional there for a second. What was the most difficult part?
I'll come back to that, and you're going to have to put up with me for just a couple more seconds for a couple more thank yous. I know it's not the press's favorite part, but I'm going to acknowledge Kaylin Wickwire. She's been our victim advocate. She's reached out to the family, and they have been blessed to have her, and they've told her that they've been blessed to have her. She's done a wonderful job of letting the family know what's going on throughout this case. Anybody else here? I'm going to let my attorneys speak for themselves. I'm going to ask them to step forward at this point and make comment. I'll leave it open to whether the Colorado Bureau of Investigation agents are allowed to speak or what they can say at this time.
I think that I just want to say that we had the privilege of meeting the Berreth family very early on in this investigation, in that first week when Kelsey was reported missing. And it's been an honor to work with her family and to represent Kelsey Berreth in this matter. And we're very pleased and very grateful for the opportunity to have done that for her.
Well, Beth and Dan have stolen my thunder, because I was going to say the exact same thing. It has been an honor to work for justice for Kelsey. As Dan told all of you, she was a wonderful, kind soul. So to be able to bring justice for what happened to her is an honor and something I will never forget. And I'm so pleased and thankful for the hard work and diligence that this jury and the work that they did on this case. Thank you.
Clearly emotional for probably all three of you. Can you speak to the toll it's taken on you the last year to kind of go through this evidence before anyone knew what you guys were looking at?
I don't know that words can truly express that. When I described earlier this afternoon at sentencing that we knew something terrible had happened to Kelsey, and when we first learned of how terrible it really was, it is emotional. It was hard. We knew what her last moments on this earth were like, and yeah, it's heartbreaking because we know what happened to her.
Can you speak to the, and I don't know if this is specific for you, Jennifer, or anyone else, but the heat that Crystal Lee has gotten and how much of a benefit she was to you guys in this case?
Well, I think it's fairly clear from all the evidence that we've presented in this case that, and as Greg Slater testified to, I think one of the last times he testified multiple times, that Crystal Lee, when she came forward with all this information, it was information that we didn't have. We didn't know. We didn't know how Kelsey had died. We knew something terrible had happened to her, because you knew that. I mean, you saw the blood on the toilet. We knew something terrible had happened to her, but we didn't know what. We didn't know the extent of Patrick Frazee's devious plan. We didn't know the extent of what he had done and how he had really destroyed Kelsey's reputation throughout the entire community. So to hear all of the evidence and then to be able to go back and piece all of that together, it was obviously very critical and valuable to us.
Jennifer, if I could ask you one more question, please. Just one more question. Please.
Yes.
I know you've tried a number of different cases, and I saw you get emotional sometimes during this trial.
Yes.
I saw you look back at Mr. Berreth at one point.
Yes.
There were tears rolling down your face. What was going through your mind when you saw him crying?
I don't even know how to describe that. Just the pain I could see on a father, the pain on his face. I felt it too. I could see how heartbreaking it was for him to hear that type of emotional testimony and to hear really in many respects the last moments of his daughter's life. So when I look back and I see Mr. Berreth crying, I don't know that I could have stopped.
Berreth, did the prosecution ever offer the defendant a last-minute deal in order to square up what's unknown here?
There were no plea bargains in his situation. And I got to say, none of us wanted to give a deal to Crystal Lee. She deserves every day that the judge may or may not sentence. He'll decide that sentence, but she deserves every single day that she gets. This is part of our job I didn't like in this case. Ultimately, it was my decision. I can tell you we spoke with Miles DeYoung with the Woodland Park Police Department. We spoke to the agents who were involved in this case to get their opinions. I spoke with my team. I actually spoke with a number of other prosecutors. We did a deal with the devil. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, and I'm not proud of that. But there's no question that Kelsey wouldn't have had the sure justice today without making that deal with the devil. We didn't pick her. As I said before, it's the defendant who picked her. He's the one who decided to put all these witnesses into this case. We had to deal with it. We felt it was important to solve this case, and in the end, we concentrated on who killed Kelsey. Next process in the criminal process for her will be she's going to be sentenced. We have a review date coming up, I think December 2nd. I don't know if that's just a review or if we'll use that for sentencing. So it may be December 2nd or it may be a future date, but the next thing that for Crystal Lee is to come back to court for sentencing. Okay, I heard too many questions.
Right here. He asked for several witnesses to be killed ahead of his murder trial. Are you guys taking safety measures to protect people to testify, along with Mr. Greg Slater and those people who remember?
Absolutely. For those that you've heard about and those that you haven't heard about, we've taken absolute. We've notified every single one of them, and we've taken precautions.
To follow up on that, could the district attorney's office charge Frazee additionally for solicitation of murder?
That's something that I guess I can't comment on what future events may be. Certainly, we took that very seriously. There is an open investigation, and we'll see where it goes.
Will the verdict affect what happens to Kaylee moving forward? Do we know?
Excuse me.
Will today's verdict affect what happens with Kaylee going forward with custody?
That's a better question to ask the custody attorneys. Those custody hearings are very sealed. For those of you who saw the Mary Longmire who talked from the DHS who's involved in those custody hearings, she had to get permission from the court because of the privacy concerns to testify to our questions before she could answer those. So that's one that you have to ask the court or the attorneys involved on where the custody stands with Kaylee. Certainly it's something that Kelsey Berreth addressed in her sentencing letter.
Question for the investigators or perhaps you. Will there be any further attempts to locate Kelsey's remains, maybe out of information that's come out more recently?
Do you want to
Sounded
answer
like
that
that
as the
was hinted at in
investigators?
court.
We'll always look for Kelsey.
Are you able to elaborate at all any more beyond that? On
We've
where?
I'm not really good at this, but we've from time to time, Chris and I get a lot of tips. We get phone calls. People have thoughts of maybe where Kelsey may be. Friends or former friends of Patrick's will tell us that, so we do, and we will continue to try to find Kelsey's remains.
You think we'll ever find them?
I don't know, I hope so.
I can tell you even just a few weeks ago they were searching another location for her remains.
Can you talk about the amount of security Patrick Frazee's gotten throughout this trial, the tent that was put up, why that was put up, and the amount of cop cars that just escorted him out of here?
And why was he allowed to walk around the courthouse without handcuffs?
Well, the number one security, you'd have to talk to the sheriff's office, provides the security for this courthouse. Generally, judges follow the advice of the sheriff's office in any community I've been in and how they handle security. Certainly, the defendant has a right to be tried and due process, and one of those is we always make sure the jurors do not know that they are in custody during the trial. That's considered prejudicial, so they go out of their way to make sure the jury never sees a person in custody in the courthouse at any time. You had a question.
When you said you made the deal with the devil, were you talking about Crystal or were you talking about him?
I was talking about Crystal Lee. We made a deal with the devil with Crystal Lee. We've made no deals with Patrick.
Can you speak to Patrick's demeanor? I mean, he showed no emotion, no remorse at all in this trial. Did it bother you, or did you expect it?
Did anybody else want to comment on that one? You want to comment, Beth? You've talked about it.
Do you think he'll ever admit it?
I think based on my observations of Patrick Frazee over the last year that there's a potential that Patrick Frazee indicates and is consistent with a sociopath. And that's a person who has basically an inability to feel empathy with other people. I've never seen him to be anything but the emotionless state that he has demonstrated in the court throughout this trial.
Hey Beth, we could see Mr. Berreth ourselves and his emotion. You've been in touch with the family, with Cheryl and Mr. Berreth throughout. Can you just speak to can't speak to them. Can you speak to what this verdict means to them?
I think it means peace, for once. I know that Ms. Berreth described some sleepless nights in her sentencing statement. I think it means some closure for them and the ability to heal and move on. As Cheryl Berreth indicated, they will never enjoy Thanksgiving again. This is a very painful reminder for them. And I think their biggest concern is now they have potential of permanently having custody of Kaylee, although that has yet to be determined. What do they tell Kaylee? What do they tell her about what happened to her family? I know that's a big thought on their mind.
Beth, you gave the first part of the closing arguments. Is there anything you really wanted to drive home to the jury that you felt was successful?
Well, I get an hour to talk about 2 weeks of evidence. So I think I was pretty good at talking about the main points that needed to be hit, which is, again, and it can't be denied, the evidence in this case absolutely and completely supports what Crystal Lee said in this case. And the evidence in this case absolutely and completely contradicts any known statement of Patrick Frazee regarding these events.
In your closings, you listed a number of motives that Frazee could have had. Is there one that the prosecution really thinks is the motive?
I don't think I could say that.
How much of a blessing were those jailhouse letters to come at the heart of the trial as you guys are trying to convict him?
I think the evidence was strong and spoke for itself well before those letters came to light. And we were very confident in our case before those letters came to light. I think those letters provided a little bit more glimpse into Patrick Frazee and what his mindset is and how he thinks.
Beth, did you guys ever consider calling Patrick Frazee's mother as a witness?
I can't speak to trial strategy on that.
What do you think it says that the jury came back so quickly with verdicts here?
I think it says that they paid attention, listened well. They were a very attentive jury, and frankly understood everything we were trying to get at.
Dan, can I ask you about Crystal? She was critical to your case, but you say you made a deal with the devil. She's not been sentenced yet. How much time do you think she should get, if any? What do you think her punishment should be?
Again, we'll address that at her sentencing. That's the appropriate time to address that. I can't speculate or I can't talk about what we'll do in the future. We'll be in the courtroom, you'll be there, and you'll hear exactly what we'll ask for.
If you had known what she was going to say, would you have still accepted the same deal that you got?
Had to say, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
When you made this deal with Crystal, you weren't exactly sure what all she was going to tell you. With hindsight 2020, would you still have made that same deal?
No, I don't know. There's no question, as we were watching the interview, when she was being interviewed by the agents, we could see that in another room on a TV screen. We were shocked as anybody who heard her testimony throughout this case as we listened to her. There's no question, but I don't know. I don't know.
Dan, a lot of people say that our digital footprints are the new DNA in cases like this. Would you agree with that?
The what?
That our digital footprints are the new DNA. Do you agree with that?
Digital. In terms of the investigation, in terms of all the digital, certainly that's the way video and digital has changed in my career substantially over the last 10 years, I'll say. DNA, a lot of people think it goes back forever. We didn't even have a bank to look at DNA in, and if I go back to 1999, I don't think it was invented until 2001. So it's 20 years that DNA has really been in the know. Yes, anymore, the police are going to, everybody has video cameras on their homes and businesses, and you saw that was very important in this case to establish, as he's going by that the log furniture store and other places. Certainly cell phones, as the quality of the experts we had in this case was incredible. Special Agent Hoyland did a fabulous job. Talked about how the Supreme Court has recognized those as sophisticated tracking devices, your phones now. It's incredible the amount of information. He was telling us when you get in your car tonight, Google and Verizon know what type car you actually got in. They have 38 different styles. By the barometric pressure, they can tell when you got in and out, whether it was an SUV, whether it was a sedan. It's incredible what they can get off of the phones anymore. They learned in this case, actually you heard that the FBI before this case did not even realize they could actually, if you have a drop call, that they can actually track right to the mile by the speed of sound, with the sound going back and forth between the towers, how far you are from the tower. They learned that in this case. So they're even learning things as they go along to answer that question.
Outside of Viehman's testimony, what would you say was your strongest piece of evidence?
Early on, we identified certainly Crystal Lee Kenny as an important piece of evidence, and that's where Jennifer was assigned to her probably back in December. She was assigned to her. We recognized the phones, and Beth was assigned to work with Hoyland right there again probably in January or December. We knew that would be a critical piece of evidence. Certainly you saw that, again, the experts were just fabulous. Jonathan Priest, if you didn't think he made a difference in this trial, understanding what really happened in that crime scene. Jerry Means, who was the arson expert, did a fabulous job. Dr. France, when she testified about the tooth, I mean, it was amazing the experts that we have here in Colorado. I think the jury had great faith in them. Radar, what was Radar's, what was his name? Yeah, he did a great job. He's trained Radar, and you saw he was nationally. I guess people want to see Radar. I know we got contacts for that, but it was the quality of those experts. There was a lot of important evidence. Certainly, some of his friends came forward, didn't want to come forward. Obviously, loved him at one time, and their testimony was crucial in this case. Well, you know, a large portion of her family was in the courtroom through these proceedings. Her father was there, many of her uncles and aunts and other cousins. Someone needs to take care of Kaylee, and they know that that's the number one thing going forward is they want to take care of Kaylee. So they returned home to take care of Kaylee also. Cheryl was able to listen in on the sentencing. I personally didn't notify Cheryl, but we did notify her of the verdict right away so that she was aware of it, and the family, obviously it gave them great relief today. They very much felt justice was done today, and it gave them a huge relief today. And they, okay, I didn't hear any of that with that truck that went by. I apologize.
Today's the 18th. We're coming up on a lot of unfortunate anniversaries for the Berreth family. How do you and your team feel about giving them absolution before they have to go through those anniversaries, still asking questions?
I think we formed a special relationship with the Berreth family. I think they're salt of the earth. They're private people typically. They haven't really talked to the press. It's not something that they don't feel comfortable with that at all. They love everybody in their family. They love Kelsey. They love Kaylee. It's been a very, very difficult time for them, and it's I think this gives them. They really had a sense of justice today. It really did give them relief. The judge's words and the judge's decisive sentencing made a big difference to them in giving them relief that justice was done today. How long that'll last, again, justice can't bring Kelsey back.
They weren't able to have a funeral. They might have gotten justice today, but ultimately, a piece of her is still lost. They don't have that closure. Can you speak to that empty bowl that they're going to have for the rest of forever unless something else is found?
I don't know how big a hole that is. They know that Kelsey is gone. They know, they're very religious. They know exactly where Kelsey is today. There's, I think, some comfort in that. The fact that they don't have her remains, I got to think would be a hole, but they really haven't expressed that to us.
So twofold. Now, one, with the sentence already being handed down, do you anticipate some of the discoveries, some of the exhibits being released? Two, do you know if any of the jurors
It's up to the jurors whether they want to talk to you or not. I know that you could watch the jurors and see this is a very emotional trial. That'll be up to them whether they want to discuss things with you. On the exhibits, actually I wanted to ask the judge that today. I know some people have expressed a couple of particular exhibits like the timeline, photos, things like that. The judge left the bench before we could ask him those questions, so I don't know what's going to happen with the exhibits.
So it's the judge's call, it's not Woodland Park Police or whoever's?
It's primarily the judge's call at some level. So,
We talked a lot about the plea deal. Can you tell us how that went down? What you started out with, what Drew Nielsen started out with, how you got to where you were? What did you start out with when you first started talking?
I'm just going to tell you that's the deal that we arrived at.
How long did it take?
Oh, we discussed it.
Hours?
Um,
Minutes?
oh, we started discussions actually before she arrived in Colorado. And then she came out to Colorado and we were still in discussions. So it was over, probably fair to say hours, but those hours could be more like 48 hours or something, but I don't recall exactly.
So you finally